So, what happens when the debt can't be repaid? Well, when it comes to individuals and businesses, it's pretty simple. When the debt exceeds the amount that the borrower can pay back, usually one of two things happens. Either the borrower just flat out says, I can't pay this, and defaults on the payment, or there is some type of settlement or restructuring of the loan. But what happens when you look at the national debt and realize there's no way for that debt to ever be repaid? How does that work? This has been a realization for a long time now for the powers that be. And it's no mistake that the debt ceiling has been raised 78 times. This is called kicking the can down the road. So how do I and the powers that be know that this debt can never be repaid? Let's jump on in. So here we are at the official Federal Reserve website, and we have a graph of the M2 money supply. If you're not aware, M2 is basically a measurement of the money supply, or more simply put, how much money is out there in the economy. You can see that there is about $20.7 trillion. That is a lot of money. Probably unfathomable to most people, but there's one gigantic problem. Here is a screenshot showing our current national debt. As you can see, it's at over $34 trillion. So I don't think it takes a mathematician to figure out that the amount owed, $34 trillion, is much larger than the amount of money that is even available at just under $21 trillion. The U.S. owes $13 trillion more on the national debt than is even available. What? And want to know what's even worse? Well, it only gets worse. So I used US Debt Clock's time machine to show us what the numbers will be like 4 years from now. And look, these numbers are not randomly generated. They get these numbers by doing calculations at the current rates. So basically, if we continue at the same pace we are on right now, these are what the numbers will look like. Our debt will be up another $12 trillion. And the worst part, most people don't realize, is that net interest number. 4 years from now, it's going to be $2.5 trillion. That would be our highest expense. Right now, it's only $727 billion. Okay, so just to give you a picture, right? In 2023, federal spending was about $6 trillion. With the interest at $727 billion, that means that about 12% of our spending was on interest alone. Assuming we spend around the same amount in 2028, which is fair considering the last few years have been around $6 trillion, well, that would mean that we'd be paying 42% of spending on interest. So when you spend that $100,000 check to the IRS for taxes, $42,000 of that is just going to pay off the interest. We're just talking about 4 years from now. 10 years from now, it's possible that the interest owed will match the budget. So if the government received $5 trillion in tax money and owes $5 trillion in interest, how is everything else going to be paid for? Medicare, national defense, Social Security. The truth is that less and less money is available for these things each year, and we are going more and more in debt to shell out that money. The problem is, the more we do this or kick the can down the road, the larger the problem has become. We are extremely close to a collapse, and we are only talking about US debt right now. We bring in worldwide debt, and it gets uglier, but I won't do that to you. So you may be wondering, well, how the hell did this happen? How could we possibly have more debt than there is available money? Short answer, a fiat money system. I'm going to give you the more in-depth answer as well, but if you watch our channel, you understand that any fiat money system is bullshit. They have a 100% failure rate, and this one is no different. So here's the more in-depth explanation, and I'm going to explain one large part of this, right? So if you open up your bank account right now, there's going to be a number for your account balance. Let's just say it's $1 million. So you open up your online banking, the numbers on the screen say money sign 1, 000, 000, $1 million. So that means you have $1 million in your account, right? Well, not exactly. Technically, those are just numbers in a computer or numbers on a paper. Technically, that money really isn't there. If everyone went to the bank right now and wanted all their money out of their accounts, the banks couldn't do it, not even close, because they don't have all of that money. The banks bet on the fact that only a certain percent of people will request money out of the bank at one time. If they bet wrong and that percent is higher, this is where bank failures start to come into play. So that kind of lays the groundwork for how there is more debt than actual money in the economy. But let's go into specifics. Because of the bank's bets that a certain percent of people won't request their money at the same time, they operate on a fractional lending system. This is a system which banks keep only a fraction of their deposits in reserve as cash and other liquid assets, and then they lend out the remaining portion of the deposits. I'm going to make this very simple to understand. So the reserve requirement for a long time was 10%. So we're going to go off that as an example, and then you'll understand how it's gotten even worse since March of 2020. So if you deposited $100,000 into a bank with a 10% reserve requirement, the bank only had to keep $10,000. The other $90,000 could be lent out. Yes, you heard that right. In a 10% reserve requirement, when you deposit $100,000, there's only $10,000 guaranteed to be there. The other $90,000 is being used for what they see fit. And it goes deeper because that $90,000 that is lent out may end up back in the bank from another person or other people collectively. And out of that $90,000, only $9,000 has to be kept in reserves and another $81,000 can be loaned out. And this just keeps repeating all the way down the line. But it still gets worse. In 2020, the reserve requirement was pushed down to 0. You can see here in this snippet screenshot from Wikipedia. On March 26, 2020, the Federal Reserve reduced reserve requirements to 0%. So under this rule, if you deposit $100,000 into the bank is allowed to loan all $100,000 out. Obviously, this was done right around COVID, but I feel like this was the government's way of just giving up. They're like, all right, let's just give in, just blow this shit up as quick as possible. And this is part of the reason that things are spiraling out of control quicker and quicker. This is usually pretty hard to believe for anyone that is hearing it for the first time. I remember when I was first learning this stuff and I was like, no way, like that can't be how this works. But sure enough, it is. Have you ever heard the saying with money creation? And it's that the Federal Reserve basically prints money out of thin air. Has anyone ever heard that before? Well, in truth, it's actually worse than that because money is majorly created out of debt. Man, that is sure a trick that I wish I mastered. What if someone came to you and they said, hey, the more debt you create, the more opportunity that you get to make money? I'd be like, hell yeah, let's go. I'd be handing out loans all over the place. Hey, here's a loan for you, and a loan for you, and a loan for you, a loan for you. And hey, if I loan out too many and they all go bad, I just get bailed out. So cool, loans for everyone. Man, I can make my own money by just giving people loans. I feel like Santa Claus out here. Obviously, I'm joking around a little bit here, but that really is how it works. Our entire financial system is built off of debt. And I will give credit to the powers that be for one thing. They have made this last much longer than I would have expected. But make no mistake, this fiat currency system is past the point of being able to be fixed. Just like 100% of the fiat currency systems that preceded them, it will fail. And there are many ways you can protect yourself. The typical person takes the typical advice of the typical 401k. Of course, that advice comes from the financial advisor who earns a percentage. Some of my favorite options currently are land, crypto, and precious metals. Now, when it comes to land, that's a lot more complex and it's going to have to be something you learn over time. Crypto, I'm also a very big proponent of, but it is also riskier. If you are newer to crypto, a good option is just starting with buying some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, some Solana, or something along those lines that's a higher cap coin. As far as precious metals, I believe that's the easiest one to get into, and really, it's had the longest track record. Well, land is up there too. Precious metals has been used successfully for thousands of years, and it's the one thing that has been able to keep monetary systems in check. It's no mistake that the BRICS countries are trying to introduce a new currency backed by gold. They understand how gold regulates monetary systems, and how fiat currency never works. Check the links below for my recommended precious metals dealers. If you don't use them, just make sure the company you use is very reputable. And just be very careful right now holding all of your money in a traditional 401k. Think about just putting at least some of that into a precious metals IRA with real money. Make sure you subscribe, comment, let me know your thoughts. Talk soon.